Today's episode of WTF is sponsored by Audible. Go to audiblepodcast.com/WTFpod to get a free audiobook download. Do it.
Lock the gate!
Are we doing this? Really?
Wait for it.
Are we doing this?
Wait for it.
Ow! What the fuck?
WTF.
And it's also, what the fuck? What's wrong with me?
It's time for WTF.
What the fuck?
With Marc Maron.
Okay, let's do this. How are you, what the fuckers? What the fuck buddies? What the fucking ears? What the fuck agents? I just made that one up. A lot of them are coming in. I can't keep up with them. That's it. I'm only doing 3. I am Marc Maron. This is WTF. Welcome to the show. I'm glad you're listening. Today on the show, Joe Rogan will be here in the garage in a little bit. Looking forward to talking to Joe. Got some things I want to talk to Joe about. Right out of the gate, I'd like to say I will be at the Comedy Club on State Street in Madison, Wisconsin. You know, those dates are March 31st through April 2nd. I will also be at the Melbourne Comedy Festival in Melbourne, Australia for a couple weeks in April. I don't know what my dates are. Go to their website. I don't know what that is, but I'll be there. Come down and see me. God, what a vague plug that was. As you know, we recorded a couple of live WTFs in Brooklyn a couple of weeks ago. You heard the one with Heather Knight, the roboticist, and Otto and George. We did a second show at the Bell House. We had Bill Hader, Fred Armisen, Chuck Klosterman, Sarah Vowell, Eric Drysdale. That podcast is fucking awesome. And we're going to put it up in a couple weeks on April 7th, actually. But you guys who have the upgraded WTF apps or the WTF premium account at Libsyn, that's our server, you get to hear it right now. It's all you. So if you can't wait to hear that, go grab an app or grab that premium upgrade at the server there. And you can hear that now. Bill Hader, Fred Armisen, Chuck Klosterman, Sarah Vowell, Eric Drysdale. Hilarious show. It will be up for everybody on April 7th. And that's 3 days after April 4th. And April 4th, you know what that is, don't you? Conan and Maron Day. That's right. April 4th, Conan O'Brien will be here in the garage. Looking forward to that. Man, it's a long time coming. Huh, guys? Yes. The other thing I wanted to bring up is, as some of you know, certainly you people who came out to Atlanta to the Laughing Skull Lounge, what a great club that is. And I just wanted to put a little love and a little support behind the comedy festival they're having down there, April 6th through 10th. There are finals from a search of over 600 comics nationwide that will be appearing at that festival. That's the Laughing Skull Festival. And also, my friend Marshall down there, who runs the club, created these fucking awesome T-shirts. It's a whole Laughing Skull line of T-shirts. I have one on right now. They're that really soft American apparel, comfortable, good to sleep in, good to hang out in. But for you guys, for you what the fuckers who want to support a cool club and a great comedy festival, you can get those T-shirts at skullfestival.com/WTF for free shipping. And get a little deal over there on the shipping. And you can also go to the festival or see info on the festival at skullfestival.com. But check out those shirts, man. Laughing Skulls, a new take on the skull. That website again, skullfestival.com/WTF for those shirts and skullfestival.com for all information on the Laughing Skull Comedy Festival. All right, let's get into a little riff here before I get Rogan in here. I've been thinking about irony again. I've been thinking about Charlie Sheen. I've been thinking about, myself. I've been thinking about integrity. I've been thinking about this idea of ironic detachment, how much that word gets thrown around. It sort of annoys me. The thing that kind of threw me for a loop, or that got me thinking about this, I was in Atlanta. And when you're in Atlanta, there's all this, everyone wants you to go to this Claremont Lounge. Now, I didn't go because of my assumptions. That's fine. I wasn't condescending. I just didn't want to deal with it. I don't like dealing with crowds. I don't drink. And there was part of me that did not want to see these beat up old strippers doing their thing. Now, someone said to me on Twitter or in person, I can't remember, is there a difference anymore, folks? Someone said to me, it's ironic. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean that it's ironic? Is it ironic? Is the place ironic? Is your being there ironic? Are you looking at it ironically? What does ironic mean? Does that mean that you're using the word ironic to detach from something that is pathetic and mock it or condescend it or laugh at it? Is that what ironic means? Is that your disposition? Is that your excuse for not committing to your emotional reaction to it? Is an ironic disposition another form of cowardice that you just enables you to repress your emotions or not have them or do whatever you think the rest of the people are doing? I'm sick of this fucking irony shit. I'll tell you, man, because in a situation like that, if you're saying it's ironic, does that mean the strippers are in on it? Are they all old and backstage and beat up and saying to each other, hey, isn't this great? We're really turning stripping in on itself. We're deconstructing it. We're presenting it in a different way. Our very existence is mocking the reality of what people expect from strippers in the day and age we live in now. I'm so glad we are so clever. Do you think that's really the conversation going on backstage, or are they just happy that people are coming and throwing money at them for whatever reason they may be throwing money at them? I tell you, man, in some situations, if you think you have ironic detachment, you're actually more depraved than the guys who are going there to actually get some prurient excitement, some sexual satisfaction. If you're there to say like, oh man, this is so fucked up. Oh dude, look at her. She's so old. Oh, this is so fucking sad, man. This is excellent. Hey, get me a shot of Jaeger. You're more depraved than the guy going, oh, yeah, come here, bring those wrinkly old things over here. I just love it. I just love it. You're more depraved than that guy because you are disingenuous. You are dishonest. Your ironic detachment makes you half a person, makes you lack a self, makes you a coward. I mean, I just think about this because there was a time, and I think I've talked about some of this before, where, you know, the great philosophical question used to be, you know, what is the meaning of life? And now the great philosophical question is, how am I being used, and am I okay with that? What am I willing to sacrifice my sense of self for, my sense of well-being, my sense of integrity? How much money is that worth? I mean, is it ironic to be at a job that you know you hate, but because you're overqualified or you have no choice and that you're very aware that, you know, you could be doing better things or bigger things, that as you sit with that feeling that you are taking an ironic position and that makes you feel better? Is that real irony, or is that just sad? How long does that go on for before you realize, like, this isn't worth it? You know, I'm compromising my integrity. I'm killing part of my soul here. That's not ironic. That's tragic. I'm not an ironic person. I'm a tragic person because I'm not willing to take the steps necessary to fulfill the dreams that I have, to make myself a person of integrity. Look, everybody has sold out a bit at some point in their life. Everyone's taken chances. Everyone's done what they had to do. You got to do what you have to do. But either you live with that and you honestly own it, that this is what I'm doing, or you sit there for your whole life thinking like, well, I could be doing anything. I could be doing something better. I could be doing something more creative. You know, I'm better than this job. It's just like, you know, I'm getting paid good. Now, when did that become not selling out? When did that not become a compromise? When did the cleverness and creativity of the commercial, you know, transcend the fact that it is a commercial? When did that happen? When did everything become a level playing field in terms of, you know, what has integrity and what doesn't? But everybody's got these problems, and at some point, you've got to make a stand for yourself. At some point, you got to realize, like, I did compromise my integrity. Do I want it back, or do I live with this? It's just interesting. I've been thinking a little bit more about the Charlie Sheen thing for reasons that I'll get to, you know, I'll talk about later. But just in terms of the fact that no matter what level of success you are at, you know, when one snaps for whatever reason, you know, there's a freedom in that snapping. There's an explosive expression, you know, of poetry and rage and insanity that is probably the most honest anyone's going to be in their life. When are you going to have your explosive rage and poetry about just the condition of your life? Where is that moment of freedom for you? And do you have it? Do you think about it? Do you fantasize about it? And can you ever transcend whatever compromises you made in your life to compress your soul into the coal that it is? But look, man, I hosted a game show. I did. Some of you know about it. It was the worst fucking time of my life. I was broke. I had somehow bent it in my mind as something that I could make my own, but I've never been very good at hiding the fact that I'm filled with hate. It was the American version of Never Mind the Buzzcocks. Maybe I've talked about it before, but thank God it didn't take off. I had no idea how the flow of the game went or what it was about, or I didn't care, but I needed the money. So I did that, and I felt fucking disgusting for it. I got sick, I got skinny, I felt like I'd compromised everything that I'd worked for, and I made 75 grand. I got out of the hole, I got through the first divorce, and the thing didn't take off. Thank fucking God, I got lucky. I don't know what I would have been had I been hosting that thing, or whether or not that explosion of rage and honesty and poetry in order to regain my freedom after I took it up the ass that hard for money would have saved me. Thank God I did not have to deal with that. I got lucky. Now I'm in my garage exploding twice a week for you. I mean, the enemy of irony is having the courage to love something or like something or trust your own opinion and not be part of the united front of condescension, of fear, of actually having feelings about something that may be tragic or pathetic or dated or not your thing. Go find your thing. Don't go back in time or go into sordid little holes where you can sit there and pretend like you're above it all, like you're pompous, like you are better than, like you are representatives of the empire. Did you read that article by Bret Easton Ellis about Charlie Sheen on post-empire, the difference between empire and post-empire and cultural thinking? It's a fascinating little essay. It's very interesting. I don't know where it's leading. I don't know what this post-empire culture world that we're living in on an entertainment level is going to be, what it's going to mean to civilization. But, man, we want it all on the table. The more menacing the truth, the better it feels to witness. This episode of WTF is brought to you by Audible.com. You can go to audiblepodcast.com/WTFpod to get a free audiobook download. God damn, they've got thousands and thousands of things you can stick in your thing that make it go through the headphones into your head. If you like spoken things, music things, anything that you can play on your iPod or on your computer or any sort of thing that you can plug earphones in, you can go to audible.com. And if you go to audiblepodcast.com/WTFpod, you can get a free Audible book download. For instance, we were talking about irony today. Right here, I just do a search on irony. I find The Irony of American History by Reinhold Niebuhr. That's right. He was a very popular and profound and wise lefty theologian, cultural spokesperson. Did some great stuff, that guy. You've also got Irony Lives by Paul Krasner, who was a guest on this show. You can get that at audiblepodcast.com/WTFpod for nothing. How about some Audible Proops? Greg Proops has two right here, Audible Proops 24 and 25. One is The End of Irony. The other is Operation Intense Irony. You can get those for free. Well, one of them, one free download at audiblepodcast.com/WTFpod. That's because this show today was brought to you by Audible.
You know, you build something about somebody in your head.
Right.
And then 9 times out of 10, you know, you see them and you're like, oh, hey, what's up, man?
Yeah. Brian Callen, a good friend of mine, just recently ran into Mencia, and Mencia was like, how's it? Because a lot of people think Brian and I are brothers. It said it on IMDb, and for whatever reason, we decided not to change it.
Yeah.
And he was like, how's your brother? Haven't seen him since that whole thing went down. Tell him I said hi. Like,
that's what Carlos said?
Yeah, like, what? Like,
yeah.
He's an interesting guy.
Yeah, but like the thing you were talking about with my wife is that as much as I hate her, or I don't hate her, but as angry as I was, if I saw her again, there would be part of me that'd be like, we okay? We good?
Yeah.
You want to give your baby back to that guy that you had it with and come back and live with me? Joe Rogan, It's happening, is in the garage here at the Cat Ranch. It was weird that you tweeted something, and you said we've known each other for years, but we've never had a conversation.
Never really have.
It's weird, right?
Yeah, it's really weird.
I mean, I've had a relationship with you in my mind. I remember when you started doing comedy, I think.
I remember very much when I started doing comedy.
Was it 88, 87?
88, August 27th.
Really? You know the date?
Yeah.
I remember you showed up at Stitches, Are you going to say something nice about me?
Yeah, I was going to say that you, I'd been doing comedy maybe 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
And you were already an established professional comedian, and you came up to me at the Comedy Connection, and you gave me some really nice advice and a compliment, and it fired me up, and I was really excited. Yeah.
Do you remember what I said?
I would have to be paraphrasing, but you were saying something along the lines of you're doing really great stuff. Keep with it, stay original, keep writing, just keep doing it, and
I wonder if that's one of those things because I remember. When I first saw you, I had this problem with guys who were, athletically oriented or had some sort of athletic nature about them before they came into comedy. And I remember that you and Kevin Flynn, he was like a soccer guy.
Yeah.
And you were a kickboxing champion. And there was part of me that was like, this is not for them. This is not their world. Why are they here? Why don't they stay in their competitive world?
Well, that's silly.
Well, of course it's silly. But you were sort of a cocky fuck then, weren't you?
Well, I was definitely a lot different than I am now, but I was right. It was literally not even removed from fighting. I was still competing. And, when you're fighting, I had 3 fights, 3 kickboxing matches while I was still doing comedy before I stopped doing it, before I realized I had to pick one road or the other. But it's such a fucked up mindset when you're entering into a competition. You're agreeing to meet at a certain time, and you're gonna get into a ring and literally throw your bones at each other and try to hurt each other. It's a really fucked up mindset. And if you're not trying to do it for a living, if that's not your career, it's something that you get wrapped up in it, and it becomes you.
Did you bring that to comedy, though? Was I sensing something?
I don't think so. I just had it about me, I'm sure. I was still competing. You're guaranteed to be fucked up if you're doing that. You're always...
Were you always like that, though? So I guess we're all competitive, but I tend to not... In my life, I wish I was driven towards sports, so I would have some sense of healthy competition. Because with me, it's always life-threatening, and it's going to get personal. It doesn't matter what it is. Whether it's Trivial Pursuit or a softball game, at some point I will be so upset that I will have to quit.
Do you get upset at ping pong games or playing pool or something?
Well, I'm very I know I can do it. I'm one of those guys that for the first game I'm focused, I'm in it, and I can play well. But by the second game I'm like, I can't follow through with this competition thing, and you're an asshole.
Well, I was always very competitive because I had a fucked up childhood, and winning at things was one of the few things that gave me some sort of a sense of self-esteem, some sort of sense of...
What, did your dad beat the shit out of you?
Didn't beat the shit out of me, but beat the shit out of my mother. And my parents were divorced when I was about 5, and my mom remarried when I was 7, and we traveled all over the country. My stepdad was he was a computer programmer, and he became an architect.
Better guy?
Much better guy. Very nice guy.
Someone told me that if someone, if your brother's the one getting beat up or your mother or something like that, that it has more of an effect on you than you getting your ass kicked.
I'm sure it does. I don't know, because he never beat me. No one ever beat me up when I was a kid. I was lucky in that regard, but watching it happen, it's one of the most profound memories of my childhood. And I don't know necessarily if what I'm seeing in my brain, your entire body recycles itself every 7 years except for your neurons. We really don't even know.
I wanted to learn from Joe because I know he's doing the big work. I do.
I'm doing a lot of weird shit.
I know.
But, we don't know what our memories really are. You don't exactly know how many times have you thought you remembered something and then went and saw the place where you grew up and wow, this is so small.
Well, don't you
so
also
different.
Build a myth, kind of, that don't you construct a memory that sort of functions to hold it as an emotional thing in your life? I find as I get older, they're diminishing. So you're saying that much of that stuff, if you don't reframe it every 7 years somehow, it'll just go away?
I don't even think it's a reframing issue. We don't know where the memories are stored. There's a lot of people that believe that memories are actually non-local.
They're stored. They're in these photographs right here. That's how they sell those to us.
It definitely helps.
That's a memory of my second wife when I liked her. Right there. I still have it
photo?
up. It's pathetic.
Is that Dr. Katz?
That's a Dr. Katz
cartoon.
He was
the host of the very first open mic night I ever did.
Oh, I remember when Johnny's in.
Katz. Yeah.
I remember you at Stitches, but let's get back to this thing, this framing of memories.
So anyway, that's my big memory from my childhood is my mother coming home with hamburger meat and my father being upset that it was hamburger that she had brought home for dinner, and he beat the shit out of her. And that was the last time, and then we left.
It's hard for me to even hear that. You left in the middle of the night, kind of left? Or?
I don't really totally remember. I just remember all of a sudden we were staying at my grandfather's.
How old were you?
Maybe 4 or 5, not sure.
And do you think that somehow or another that put that fight in you?
Yeah, unquestionably. Yeah, the desire to defend yourself. And I was always small
and
too.
Defend your mom.
Yeah, that too. Yeah, I mean, my stepdad came along really quickly. Luckily, we moved to a new apartment, and she met this guy, and he's a really great guy. But there's that feeling that you can't trust anybody. Like, I thought my dad was this great guy. He's, when you're a kid, your dad's your hero,
right?
And then all of a sudden I realized when I was 5 years old, very clearly, that my dad was a douchebag.
Was he a drunk?
No, he's just a big, scary guy. He's just a really violent guy.
It's interesting because I think some people at some points in your life would have thought that about you. That you were a pretty scary, tough little guy.
Maybe, but I didn't do anything to anybody. Maybe if you looked at me or something, but not from dealing with me. I mean, I'm a pretty nice guy.
Yeah, I'm finding that in the last few times I've met you. I did.
Well, we don't know each other. That's the weirdest thing.
That you're a pretty nice guy.
And I've tried to always be nice to you because in my mind, you were this guy that really said something really nice to me when I was, basically a total beginner.
Well, I will tell you how that all evolved in a second, but I'm still a little curious about do you talk to your real father?
No, I don't know him. I haven't seen him since I was 6 and haven't spoken to him since I was 7.
He's never reached out?
No, and his name is Joe Rogan too. And he was a martial arts guy, which is really crazy. So he must know who I am.
How did you know? How did you find that shit out about him?
Well, I knew about him when I was young. I mean, he was doing karate when I was a little kid.
When you were 5?
Yeah, he was always doing it.
And you chose to do that?
Well, I chose to do it because I was getting picked on. I was always small, and I didn't have friends because I was moving from place to place. I lived in New Jersey till I was 7, then we moved to San Francisco, lived there from 7 to 11, and then Florida from 11 to 13, and Boston from 13 to 24. So it was like I never had a group of friends. I was always the new kid in school, and I was little, so people fucked with me, and I didn't like it. And so I tried to figure out how I could do something about that. And so I started doing martial arts.
It's just interesting to me that this guy that, you hated because he destroyed you emotionally by doing that to your mom, then you sort of, became a warrior in the same field. Sort
of, he wasn't never as dedicated as I was.
So you really did some research.
I just know from my mom.
Oh, really?
From talking to her when I was younger.
She says he was never that good.
No, he just didn't do it that often. He was a cop, and he was doing it sort of along with being a cop.
The story gets deeper and deeper.
A cop in New Jersey.
A New Jersey cop.
Yeah.
Did you find out anything else about him?
No. I ran into his friends once when I did a show in Florida.
Recently?
Really bizarre. Yeah, maybe 3-4 years ago.
They came up to you and
said, hey, we're cops from blah, 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 blah. You're Joe Rogan's kid. I go, yeah. And he goes, blah, blah. He asked me a couple questions. I go, I don't know him. I haven't seen him since I was 7.
But that means he knows who you are very well.
Oh, I'm sure he does. He has daughters that tried to contact me. And they were, they're like my half-sisters, I guess.
Yeah.
And, they were really trying, and they even tried to contact me when I was on Stern.
Yeah.
They were calling in and they were trying to get in there with me, and they were trying to arrange, and I was like, fuck that. I don't need any weird people that I'm connected to through just genetics,
Are you curious as to whether or not he went on being a domestic abuse person?
He had to be. He was so over the top. I mean, unless he had some massive mushroom trip, I don't see how he could have ever seen himself in a different way. I mean, he was just what I remember of him, and again, it's just weird memories. I remember 2 very violent moments from him. One when he beat up my mom, and one when he beat up one of my cousins, like a 16, 17-year-old cousin. I don't remember exactly what that was about.
Yeah.
The cousin had accidentally hurt somebody or something, and he picked him up by his hair, like literally in the air by his hair. It was terrifying.
God damn it.
Yeah, terrifying.
Yeah.
And so, growing up around violence and seeing that kind of shit, I didn't want anybody to be able to do that to me. I wanted to be able to defend myself. So
it's a control and protection thing.
Yeah, just
no one's going to fuck with you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like I don't want to be fucked with. It's like, what are the options? Do I carry a gun? What do I do? Do I bring weapons with me everywhere? Or do I learn how to fight and defend myself?
Did you ever have to engage it?
In a fight? No, honestly. One time in high school, but it was really quick. It was nothing.
Are you disappointed about that?
No. That's That's the first thing that goes away when you actually learn how to fight. Is you don't really want to.
You're like, I can really hurt somebody.
Well, it's that, and it's also you realize how fucking stupid it is, and most of the time it's all about some weird sort of a social positioning thing. Someone's trying to push you down to build themselves up. It's usually best avoided.
Well, the thing, I guess the thing that I responded to too, because I know this in my own self, and it probably is some reflection on me, is that when I first met you, you were very focused, you were very together. You come from this, competitive environment and this competitive mindset. You were a professional, or at least a champion at what you did, and there was a certain element to you that was you were sort of like, you definitely had this idea of who you were. You had this confidence, and no one was going to fuck with that. And I think that it became a little. I think that you were a little. I remember you were very clean. You judged people that weren't doing that did drugs or drank. That you definitely
judged them, really? What do you remember of that?
Well, I just remember that there was definitely a line drawn between people who were fuck ups and people weren't. I mean, is there a point? Am I misreading that? Was there a point where you were like, if you're going to fuck up your life, like you seem to have that control thing going?
I definitely did, but I don't think I was too judgmental about it. I had a lot of friends that did drugs or did drink. I had a couple friends that died from it. My best friend, when I was in my 20s, he died of. They don't know if it was heroin or coke. He had a lot of issues with drugs, and I had grown up with a buddy of mine whose cousin sold coke, and when we were in high school, I watched him deteriorate. I watched him completely fall apart.
Right.
Going from this guy who was like this really fun, happy guy to being like a waif. He was like really skinny, and him and his girlfriend would just sit in. They had a basement apartment, and they would just sit in the apartment, or an attic apartment actually. And they would sit in the apartment and just fucking watch TV and do coke. I mean, they never left the house, and it was spooky. It was like watching somebody who got poisoned, or watching somebody who got
because they don't know that it's happening.
Yeah,
and they think they're having a good time.
It's like he became something different. He got changed. He became.
You saw him. You knew him when he was a kid, and then he changed into that.
I was always terrified of being a loser. I was always terrified of being a failure or not worth something. And like I said, most of my self-esteem had come from getting good at things. And initially it was from art. I was into drawing. I wanted to be a comic book illustrator. And then as I got older, when I started doing martial arts, then it became that. And then it became anything that would, doing drugs or fucking up your life would ruin my chances of being good at that. It would ruin the only thing that didn't make me feel like a loser.
So how old were you when you got the gig on News Radio? I mean, you had been doing comedy, 6 years, 7 years?
6 years, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was about 27.
How did that come about? How long did you live in Boston? Did you move there for comedy, or was your mother there?
No, I moved to Boston because my father went to the architectural, whatever the architectural stepfather,
yeah.
And that was when we were 13. When I was 13. So
what part of Boston?
We lived in Jamaica Plain at first,
right, and
then we moved to Newton. We lived in Newton.
That's nice.
Newton was nice. Yeah.
No one's gonna fuck with you in Newton.
Well, they do.
Really?
Some fuck with you.
Some tough
people
Jews.
fuck with you everywhere.
Some tough Jews in
Newton. I lived in Newton Upper Falls, which
Oh.
was like the blue collar area of Newton.
That's right. I wonder where Louis lived. Did that where Louis lived?
I don't know. I think he went to. I think he was on the other side.
Oh,
in a different place.
So you were always, because you're short.
Yeah, because I was short. I was little,
yeah,
and I didn't have friends, It was all those.
But how
things.
come I always pictured you as this fucking balls to the wall black Irish fuck that was just capable of kicking ass?
Mostly Italian, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I only have a little Irish in me. It's just my last name.
Yeah, that's enough.
But I don't know, I mean, first of all, like if you're not around someone like that, and all of a sudden you're around some guy and you hear this guy's a martial arts champion, and now he's doing comedy.
Yeah, I
would probably feel the same thing. Like, this is this fucking guy invading our spot and ruining our vibe
and getting all these opportunities 6 years in.
That was just dumb luck.
I just have to admit to a little jealousy, but that doesn't surprise you, does it?
No, that's the dark element of comedy and anything artistic is seeing somebody else get something, and for some reason or other you feel like they're taking from you. It's just like why isn't that me, and why is that happening to them? It's like I've experienced it for sure.
With who? Like when you were starting out, who were you jealous of? I mean, who did you emulate, before?
Oh, okay. I can tell you this. When I first started doing stand-up, it was the Boston Comedy Riot.
Sure. And I did that, yeah.
I forget his name. Brendan something or another won it. He was a nice guy. And I remember...
I remember that guy. He was a really nice guy.
Very, very nice guy.
Like, I came in second in 88. So that you just moved there. You just started.
Just started, yeah.
And he was like a very sweet guy.
Super sweet. And somehow or another he stopped doing comedy. But I remember
he's smart.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe he just realized this is the wrong life.
I ran into him years later in New York when I was doing Caroline's. He came by and said,
I wish I remember that guy's last name.
I wish I did too, because he was a really cool guy. But I remember he started getting professional gigs right after that. He won the Riot.
Yeah.
He won the Comedy Riot, and then he started working. And I remember going, "Fuck, this fucking guy's working already."
Yeah.
Like he's actually getting paid to do comedy.
Yeah.
Because that was like. the ultimate dreams, to actually be able to pay your bills from stand-up. And I was, at the time, I was delivering newspapers and driving limos. That's what I was doing.
And still
for
fighting.
money. By that time, I think I'd stopped. I stopped 6 months in. I did, like I said, I had 3 fights, and I won 2, and the last one I got knocked out. I fought in this tournament in Rhode Island, and I fought 2 times that night. 3 times, rather, that night. I won the first 2, and then I lost the 3rd one. And I realized that I'm like, what am I doing with my time? And what am I mean, there's no money in this. I drove to Rhode Island to get punched in the face, you know, and it's really, I was doing it on momentum.
But you knew that was going to happen. What is it about that? What is it about getting the shit beaten out of you and beating the shit out of other people? And, you know, even if it's in context, that is such a rush.
Well, it's not that. It's the accomplishing of something very, very difficult. Martial arts develops your human potential. When you get through something really, really difficult, and there is nothing more difficult outside of war than agreeing to step into a closed area with another guy who's a fucking trained killer, and you're going to impose your skills on his. You're going to impose your dedication on his. You're going to impose your willpower, your mental fortitude, your ability to assess a situation and make the correct decisions in a split-second moment.
Isn't this interesting? This is
crazy.
It's exactly how you do comedy.
I don't know.
Think about it. If you think about how you do comedy, that is the ring. It's just not you and another opponent. It's not you and one guy. It's you and the audience. There's your ring. I've seen you fucking attack. I've seen your focus. There's not a whole lot of things that, you know, you think things through. You're going for the jugular. You take on that audience, right?
Boy, I don't know. I don't think about it that way. You know,
right. It's just like if you were just explaining to me your comedic style, it would make perfect sense.
That's funny. I don't see
you
it.
Never thought that?
It's me. No. When I think of it as, how am I going to get these bits through as effectively as possible?
It's the same thing. It's just interesting to me that you're a single guy in the ring of the stage, and that you were thinking the same way.
But I never think about it as like a competition with the audience, or somehow or another I'm trying to beat them. All I think about it is
I've seen you beat an audience pretty hard.
Only if it was a heckler. I mean, maybe that.
But I just think that when you have a free thinking sensibility, which you do and which I do, you know, even though you know I don't do it quite the way you do it, but I have done closer to the style that you do, which is, you know, aggressive and you know, pushing things into people's brains.
Right.
That you may not be thinking them as an opponent per se, but not unlike, you know, kickboxing or martial arts, you respect them for their position,
right.
But you're still trying to get through.
Conquer. Yeah, you're trying to conquer them. I've seen that with you. I've seen you maybe raise your voice in an unnatural way and really focus on something because you want to, like, tell the audience. Like, and I know as a comic, you're like, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Here it is.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden they go, oh, okay.
Yeah. That's not a funny tone.
Yeah.
I guess we ought to listen differently.
And then, boom, and then you say the joke.
Yeah.
And then you go into the material, and then it's like it's the dance of the rhythm that we do when we're on stage.
But sometimes it feels like, it almost feels like a parental role. You know, sort of like, can we focus a little bit here? And
people are drunk and you're not. That often is the case, right?
But the idea, though, like, still, because I know you do a lot of work with what is it, Ultimate Fighting or Extreme Fighting?
Yeah, Ultimate Fighting.
I'm sorry, I don't.
It's all the same thing.
I don't. I'm not geared towards watching any sort of competitive thing.
Mm-hmm. Nothing at all. Nothing.
I don't. No? You know, but like, okay, help me out. All right, so you're saying that martial arts, it's a discipline that is not only about concentration and about physical prowess. It's about spirituality. It's about a philosophy of life.
Well, it's also about dealing with the reality of our biology. You know, we have the same bodies that people had 10,000 years ago.
Sure.
When you had to fucking throw spears at woolly mammoths, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, this is
right.
the reality of the situation. Mm-hmm. And there's a certain amount of stress and a certain amount of distortion that comes from your biology, just from nerves and from this just a buildup of energy that doesn't get released.
Adrenaline,
everything, all the above.
Fight and flight.
That and just the fact that our reality is sitting down all day I mean, why do you think so many people have fucking road rage? I mean, there's some sort of unused energy, you know.
Well, I think that, you know, there's also the pressures of modern life, personal frustration, maybe some mental imbalance. I mean, I don't think it's all as simple as biology.
No, the biology is an element. I'm definitely not saying it's simple, but I'm saying that it is an element that you can control.
Yeah.
That element, by calming the biology, by working out, you don't even have to do martial, but to hit a bag is the best form of, like, just releasing stress. I mean, it's amazing how much clearer you can see things. Oftentimes, like, I have something's bothering me, or if there's a decision I have to make, or I'm teetering one way or another, I'll just have a really hard workout and then sit down. And it's like, okay, now I'm completely uninfluenced by my body. Now my body's completely relaxed, and all those other factors are just more manageable.
Yeah, see, I tend to use all of that energy and just fuel it into rage and self-assessment, and then that's how I make my magic.
Well, I'm a big fan of self-assessment.
But I mean, you don't have any fear or anger in your spirit?
I don't know what that means.
What do you mean? Was
Fear
it too
or
vague?
anger in your spirit is pretty vague.
Is it?
But yeah.
Well, I mean, you're talking about
your spirit is what does that even mean?
Well, I'm talking about the thing on top of your biology, outside of all this, thrust of what you're seeing as the history of mankind and our genetics, propelling us forward and our reactions being, evolved and animal-like and similar to what we were 10,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. I mean, you still come from what you come from. You still do what you do. You fight, you do comedy, you think about shit. And I know as a comic that a lot of what I do up there is fueled by a certain rage. That's what I'm asking you. Outside of the biology of it, do you experience fear or do you experience anger?
Of course. How could you not as a human being, depending on what situations arise in your life?
But none of that fuels your creativity?
Well, I try not to let it overcome me. Whether or not it fuels your creativity, I try to keep as balanced as possible. I try to look at things.
Has it overcome you before?
I'm sure, yeah. I'm sure it has. I'm sure all of them
You've lost
has.
Your shit?
On stage, in life, yeah.
Anywhere.
Everybody has.
Okay.
I mean, how could you, if you're a human being, if you haven't, then you're not experiencing something that is beyond your level of comfort.
No, I know, but I'm just trying to picture you as the in moments as being the angry asshole that I thought you were.
Well, I definitely am not who I am at 43, who I was at 21. I'm not.
What do you think the big differences are?
Everything.
Yeah.
I'm just being older, more experienced, thinking about things and correcting mistakes and just evolving. And then psychedelic experiences, isolation tanks, a lot of meditation.
I did an isolation tank once when I was in high school after I saw Altered States.
Yeah, me too.
There was a guy in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who had 2 tanks, and we had read about it. And me and my buddy got wasted, and we went over to this hippie's his house where he had the tank, and we paid him money, and we both got into different tanks. And
I have
laid
one
there.
in my basement.
I hear this. I don't listen to your show a lot, but I know you have one. Someone told me that.
Next time, if you get a chance to do my podcast, you come over to my house early, you go in the tank for a couple hours, and then do the podcast.
But will I, transform into primordial man and
You'll
then
be a
matter and
monkey
antimatter?
Break into a zoo and eat a zebra.
The only thing that happened to me was I heard a high-pitched tone in my head. And this has happened 2 times in, somewhat, I don't know if they're elevated states, but the 2 times that I've actually, found myself leaving my body or having some sort of out-of-body experience because of either drugs or the isolation tank, I hear a whistle in my brain. It's almost like yeah. But I never got over the hump into wherever it is that you're supposed to go outside of relaxed.
That takes a long time.
But what about these mistakes, dude? What do you think were the biggest, when you look back, because you are obviously a changed man, and obviously things happen to do that. You've got financial success, you have your physical disposition is still intact, you're healthy, you're at the top of the world on some level. But, at some point you weren't happy with that and something changed.
Well, I mean, it's just a gradual evolution. It's just getting through life, bombing on stage, doing well, not having good life experiences, having bad relationships, trying to figure out, was that me? Was it her? Was it my choices? What is it that does
But what
this?
do you see as a self-aware person outside of evolution? What do you think were your primary problems?
Oh, well, it's always insecurity and anger. I mean, I think with everybody, especially anybody who's really fueled. I mean, I've had many of these conversations with my friends because it seems like everybody that I know that's interesting has had some sort of a fucked up childhood. It's like almost impossible to create some exceptional person without some sort of a deficit early in their life that they're trying to make up for. I mean, I think I don't know anybody that had like a really happy, balanced childhood that was this really fascinating person. I'm sure they're out there. I mean, I'm not discounting
I
the
understand
possibility.
that. I understand the insecurity, but there were moments in my life, when I think about my relationships with women, when I think about my marriages, when I think about how isolated and angry I got at friends or how resentful I could get and things I still fight with now. I mean, I know, what some of my key areas of fucked upness are. One of them is envy. That comes from my own, my own fear, my own inability to execute what I want to do because I'm afraid of doing that. And it sort of cycles in on itself. The other comes from intimacy. If I get too close to somebody, it becomes very difficult to trust them and becomes almost impossible not to become paranoid. that I'm being fucked with somehow.
Whoa, that's heavy.
Yeah.
Wow.
What do you got?
Man, I don't think I have that. I definitely, especially young, as I was a young person, was very afraid of being connected to someone because of my childhood, because of my parents being broken up. And my stepfather was a great guy, but the reality of my childhood was my stepfather was working all day and my mom was working all day, and really nobody raised me.
What did you think was going to happen if you got connected to somebody?
They were going to hurt you, break your heart, leave you, make you feel like shit.
Yeah.
Or, somehow or another wrap you up in their life. It's being intelligent too, right? You can call it paranoid, but it's also the variables that you've already dealt with in your life.
but also like saying that now you realize that you're going to get hurt. All those things are going to happen. Yeah. You can't avoid them. You can't stop them from happening. You can't have that much control if you open your heart, right?
I think it's life. I talk about it the same way when I talk about dealing with haters online, that in one way it's good, and having shitty things that happen to you in life is the same thing. That it's like getting bit by a snake. Like if you get bit by a rattlesnake and you've never been introduced to the venom, you're gonna get fucked up. But if you just get a little venom in your system every now and then, you just build up an immunity to it, and then after a while you can deal with it. It doesn't affect you the way it did when you were younger. I mean, I remember my first girlfriend who broke up with me when I was in high school.
Yeah,
it was fucking completely devastating.
What did you do?
Oh,
Did you stalk her? Did you cry?
No, she moved to another part of the state.
Did you write her love letters?
I don't think I did, but I definitely left some really disgusting voicemails that if she saved...
You got angry?
No, like pathetic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just
like
weak, we should be together, and we should have children, and I know I love you.
God, you should find those and digitize them.
I'm sure she doesn't have them anymore. She probably deleted it right away, going, what a fucking loser. How did I let him fuck me? It's just one of the... I mean, especially because I think I was just graduating high school, and she was just moving to another part of the state, so didn't know what I was going to do with my future, and I really had no idea what I was going to do with my life, and very, very scared about the future. And then all of a sudden, she breaks up with me, and, just fucking lost.
Holy fuck, I just remembered something.
What?
I just remembered that we dated the same chick.
Who?
Dorothea.
Well, sort of. I only we went on a few dates. She was really cool, though. She's a really nice person.
Wow,
I didn't know that you dated her. That's crazy.
Briefly.
Yeah.
But I remember that, there was that moment where I'm like, comics.
That's probably why you don't like me.
Maybe. I said, you ever date any comics? She goes, Rogan. I'm like, you fucking dated Rogan? You fuck Rogan? And then there's, but that happens.
That's funny.
They all just came back to me.
That's funny.
I don't know. I don't think I had any spite over that. I mean, you weren't with her at the time, and
you must have. How could you not? When you're young, I always feel weird about some guy who fucked a girl that I dated.
Yeah, but I got her after you, so there wasn't a thing where it wasn't
right.
Like if I was a guy before, then I'd be like, that guy now.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
right.
So I think it's different.
Right.
You know, I won that one. And I guess I got to cop to a couple things in building up to this conversation, so we don't disappoint people. But before we get to that, so when was the turning point where all of a sudden you decided? Because I had a conversation with Andy Dick recently. And I know you did too.
Yeah.
But he was talking about being on news radio and feeling very intimidated and threatened by you, and that you had marginalized him in that he was fuck up and everything else. And I imagine he talked to you about that.
Yeah. So Andy has an incredibly distorted perception of the past and
of everything.
He was a huge fuck up when he was on the show, and
right.
to the point where he halted production, and he was always stoned, and he couldn't read his lines, and he's crazy. I love him. He's incredibly talented.
Right.
I love the guy. But, when he tells me, you're so angry at me. Why were you so angry? You're fucking crazy. You pulled your dick out in front of my girlfriend and tried to hop in our trailer. He was nuts. He was crazy. And he was like, I had him on the podcast. He was telling me how attracted he was to me when we were working together, and, how it was such a strain.
Yeah.
He's nuts, And so when he says I was angry to him, I was angry because he was a fucking pain in the ass.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, dude, leave me the fuck alone. Stop being so crazy. It wasn't like I'm this angry person just looking to fuck with Andy, but that's how Andy sees the world through this egotistical point of view, is that everyone is fucking with Andy.
Right.
And the reason why Andy's been arrested 1,000 times is because the world's fucking with Andy.
Right.
He doesn't see it.
Yeah.
Like I try to talk to him about he's sober now, and I'm like, that's fantastic. Like this and that. That's good. You moved on to a new stage in your life. You're done with all that bullshit. He goes, well, I wouldn't say I'm done with it.
Yeah.
I go, you're not done with it. I'm done with it for now.
No, he's very, he doesn't want to take responsibility.
Yeah, he's crazy. But that's why he's so good. That self-indulgent thought process that he has is what allows him to be fucking hilarious in a sitcom.
No, absolutely. I know that you have some love for him, and it's hard not to like the guy. It's just that, when somebody doesn't take responsibility for the chaos they're causing, they become dangerous to themselves and others, and it's sad.
Yeah.
And you get concerned, and they become hard to trust because you don't know what the fuck they're going to do.
Well,
but there's two kinds of crazy, dude. I mean, there's that kind of crazy, but there's also the kind of crazy that makes you a hyper controlling, very fucking, heavily fortified person. That's inverted crazy and outverted crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's two of many types of crazy, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, I feel that I can go both ways. I can either explode and be chaos, or I can be very well fortified.
Well, I have a real issue with obsession. With games, I have an issue with game obsession because of the fact that as I was a child, that the only thing that ever gave me any real feeling of self-esteem was accomplishing things and being good at things.
Sure.
That I get obsessed at being really good at things. Like I have a real issue. Like I can't play video games. I used to play Quake online, and it absorbed me like a junkie, where I would be fucking playing 8-10 hours a day every day. I just couldn't stop.
Did you masturbate a lot? Because it seems that my problem, if I get involved with something like that, I get to a certain level and I realize, I don't want to fucking take the time. This is getting too hard. I'm just going to jerk off. So I think all my competitive nature and the feeling of accomplishing things just went into jerking off. Like I can be done with this in 10 minutes. Yeah, and I win.
I mean, we're all going to win that way. Hopefully, that's the saddest thing when you can't win there. And I've been there before too. I've definitely been obsessed with beating off in the past.
Sure.
I got to the point when I was in my early 20s where I would jerk off and get blisters on my dick from jerking off.
Yeah.
And I would just find another way to hold my dick.
Yeah.
Fucking pathetic. And I was just sitting there. My dick would hurt in my underwear. I'm like, what is wrong with me?
Yeah. When I found lotion and then later spit, I was like, this is genius. Why didn't anyone tell me that I didn't have to just rub the fuck out of myself dry?
It's a weird thing, man.
But that was a big transition from dry to lube. And then to, sort of level off with spit. Now, I guess the transition I'm trying to make here is, when did you become this, kind of dry and brittle controlling dude into, like, the dude who tries drugs?
Well, it was a slow progress, and a lot of it had to do with, just understanding myself more from martial arts, understanding life more from reading things and watching documentaries and just thinking about life. And then when I was, I really didn't do any drugs at all until I was 30. And when I was 30, I'd always thought of drugs as for losers. I always thought of my friend's cousin who did, so coke, who fucked his life up. Those were the people
guys who died.
My
30,
Johnny.
That means you're what? You're past news radio.
Yeah,
you're done.
Yeah,
you've made your fortune on some level. Are you doing Fear Factor yet?
Not yet. It was right before I did Fear Factor. It's probably one of the reasons why I decided to do Fear Factor.
And money.
That and money. But there's no money in it at first. At first, it was just something funny to do. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was the most ridiculous show ever. Like when they first brought me into this office and they told me they're going to have this show where they're going to stick dogs on people. I remember like almost feeling like I was being punked. I was like, this is going to be on NBC?
Right. So your angle on it was that it sounded fun and trippy.
It sounded like chaos. It wasn't that way when I got into it. I mean, sometimes it was, but it was definitely much more watered down than I thought it was going to be.
Well, we can talk about that in a minute. So, okay, so before you go do Fear Factor, you're a guy that like is afraid of drugs, basically.
Yeah.
Because you've seen it ruin a lot of people, and you saw your body as a different situation. So, what did you start with? And
Two things. One, I got drunk once, and I did ecstasy with a bunch of friends in Dallas.
Yeah.
A buddy of mine lived there, and he was really into, partying, and, he convinced me that it was a good thing to try, and it's not going to hurt you, it's not addictive. So I tried ecstasy. And I remember, first of all, the feeling that you get, like, God, why can't people be like this all the time?
Sure.
Like
that's what all drug people say.
Well, yeah, right? But ecstasy in particular is a very friendly and loving and, it's just a really warm drug. It's a weird feeling when I did it with a bunch of buddies and we were fucking holding hands like guys holding hands together,
naked or
closed, but it was like this weird thing. Like it's like why would I be insecure about this at any other time?
Right, we should do this all the time. Why are we doing this all the time?
It seems so strange. It's like you realize how much how much insecurity like really defines your behavior.
How much fear?
Yeah, fear,
sure.
and that if we were assured that everyone thought and felt the same way, and that we were all like really kind to each other, and then you realize this is just like a simple change of the neurochemistry of your mind. Like
sure, it's fear and social acceptance, and what has been culturally acceptable, and how you want to be seen.
Yeah, so that was a real eye. I would never do it again because I felt like shit the next day.
Yeah,
like,
I got in under the wire on that. I tried it right when it came out. It must have been. It was probably earlier than you, but I remember I just twirled around a pole with my hand on the pole for like half hour.
It felt awesome. Right?
Oh yeah, because I could feel all of the pole, and I became part of the pole, and I was loose.
Well, the next day I couldn't read. I went to a coffee shop and I got a magazine. I was trying to read some article and I couldn't fucking read. Like I couldn't concentrate on the sentence.
So that must have been scary.
Terrible. I just realized how bad this is for your brain.
Did you think for a minute that you're like, is it going to come back?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I thought maybe I fucked my brain up for life. Like I was talking to people, it seemed normal.
Yeah.
Like they didn't know that I was fucked up. Hey, can I get a small coffee? Thank you.
What did people who knew you say about you when they saw you high like that?
Well, my friend who turned me on to it was, he was sort of like, see, I told you, man, it's going to be amazing. But then I was like, God, this is fucking terrible for your brain, dude. I feel like shit.
Didn't they say it drained your spinal fluid or something? And did
I think you
didn't do the research on it?
I think it's a dopamine issue. I think, there's a thing called 5-HTP that you're supposed to take afterwards to re-up your serotonin levels and shit.
Yeah.
What happens is,
it's post self-medication medication. Like, you're going to get,
to charge yourself back up to normal levels. But, so I decided I would never do that again. But I also decided that I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot from that experience. And then there's a guy that I did jiu-jitsu with, my friend Eddie, who is a musician and he's really into smoking pot. And, and he was always like, no, I don't even think about writing music unless I get high. Like, it really, like, tunes me into the music. I'm like, really? It's like, it just makes you fucking lazy. And he's like, when's the last time you got high? I'm like, man, it's been a long, long time. And I'd always tried it. I tried it a few times, maybe a handful over the course of my life. And it was always, I had a couple of beers or something and people are passing around a joint. Yeah. I said, okay. And I took a hit and I was probably already drunk. So I don't even know what the effects were. So I listened to him, and he's a bright, creative guy, and he seemed so together in all these other ways, and I was like, well, how could it possibly be that this guy's telling me that marijuana actually aids him? Yeah. So he got me high, and then I realized it, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. This is not what I thought it was at all. This is a different thing.
It's a relaxed part of your brain.
Relaxed part of your brain. It makes you very insecure. It makes you not insecure, I shouldn't say. It makes you very hyper aware and sensitive and
vulnerable.
Vulnerable. Yeah. Vulnerable is the word.
Wide open.
Yeah, and it allows you to evolve much faster, I think, socially. Evolve your consciousness, evolve the way you feel about things. It makes you more self-aware. Because it makes you more vulnerable, it makes you kind of assess things more and on a quicker pace, I think.
So maybe you weren't so defensive or guarded.
Yeah, and just makes you realize we're all in this fucking crazy thing, whatever it is, together.
Yeah, if you're not looking at somebody going, are they looking at me?
Yeah. They know I'm high.
Yeah, they know I'm high. Yeah, oh God, is my head the right shape?
Yeah.
But, all right, so then you sort of made it your lifestyle now, right? I mean, you're sort of built around pot at this point, or at least cannabis products.
I think it's also important that when you learn something, you tell other people that are listening to you. And, I don't tell people you should all do pot. Everybody's got their own different weird biochemistry, and some people it doesn't jive with, and some people they just can't do anything. I have a friend who says he would love to do pot, but he knows that if he smokes a joint, he'll go and buy coke, and next thing you know, he'll wake up 3 days later.
Right,
that's just how he is.
But do you think you could have gotten to that place? Because it seems to me that what you're talking about in terms of vulnerability and part of your sort of your wiring, your defensive wiring relaxes. I mean, you can do that without pot.
Yeah.
I mean, do you feel that you are capable of doing that when you're not high?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. But I definitely think I was evolving without it, But I think that the added element of I don't know how I would describe it, but just the ability to tune into another state of consciousness and sort of assess yourself more objectively than you can just while you're always protected by your ego and sort of your predetermined patterns of behavior and looking at life. The path that we get on, the track that you on as far as like how you react to things on a normal basis, it sort of becomes ingrained in your thinking.
Well, yeah, well, you were pretty sort of kind of like ambitious, well-guarded, controlling dude.
Yeah.
and you were able to sort of soften up a little bit.
Well, just able also to just see everything just a little better,
Yeah, I like the way you sort of like there's no distinction between personal evolution and some broader sense of the animal evolving. That you seem to have educated yourself to a degree that you're able to frame any personal evolution along the lines of perfecting the being that I am.
It's not even perfecting the being. It's getting over the being. Getting over the being and relaxing. Getting over what the being is trying to do, just biologically, just socially.
And that changed your entire perception of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you were able to be more magnanimous and empathetic and connected to other people.
Definitely. More friendly. More loving, more.
You're married, right?
Yeah.
And you got 2 kids.
Yeah.
And you like them.
I have a stepdaughter too.
And 13, a stepdaughter.
14.
So you got 3.
Yeah.
And you like them.
Love them.
And you get along. Everybody gets along.
Yeah.
Daddy has some tank time, and you come out of the tank.
That helps a lot.
You wash the salt off you, and okay, I'm ready for dinner.
No, it's mostly when everyone's asleep.
Oh yeah, you don't sleep.
I do, but I different hours. I can't write unless everyone's asleep. Everyone goes to bed fairly early.
The shift in your comedy, if I'm gonna, cop to, whatever issues I have with you that I refuse to accept are based in my completely in my my jealousy or intimidation about your sports background, or the fact that we shared a woman briefly. That there was a point where you got a job on a network television show. You were on the show for 6 years, 7 years, 6?
5 years.
5 years. You made a killing, and it was good. It's a good show.
It's great.
You played a guy that was very not you. You played sort of a thick dude, not that bright. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you started doing comedy again. I don't remember you doing a lot of comedy during news radio. Am I wrong?
No, I did comedy. I did have a big lapse though. When I was on news radio, I wasn't writing any. And it's one of the reasons why I kind of like re-energized my my comedy. My ambition to do comedies. When I was doing news radio, I wasn't writing any jokes. I was performing. I'd do like a set on the weekend at the Laugh Stop or at the Laugh Factory, and one at the Comedy Store. But I wasn't writing any new material. But
you weren't.
Working.
This was pre-Enlightenment, Joe.
Yeah.
And then, like in my mind, because like honestly, when you said today we've never had a conversation, so I was really assessing you as a cultural icon. That, I knew you when he started, I saw where your career went, but because we never saw each other really, except once in a while, you were the guy that I knew who started as a comic, then did the sitcom for 6 years, and then did Fear Factor for how long?
5 years.
5 years.
6 years Fear Factor.
And then what happened in my mind is that, you come out of Fear Factor, and then you're sort of, this enlightened comic, who is, pursuing the truth. And aggressive in spirit, and I'll use that word spirit again, and following the path of rebellious comics who were seeking to enlighten people, and taking a higher road intellectually than your career had implied previous.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, sure.
And there was part of me that thought, if I know you don't want to talk about this, and we don't need to talk about it, but in light of the Mencia thing, before I knew the full facts, and before I talked to you, and after I talked to Carlos, in knowing it, that there was part of me that thought this was the fundamental problem, and I've been public about it a little bit before, is that in my mind I didn't quite understand how somebody who is doing a comedy that he insists has integrity could really work on a show like Fear Factor for as long as you did, which in my mind ushered in the whole takeover of reality television, which in a sense put more comics out of work who were writers because sitcoms cost too much. So in my mind, on some sort of level, that your television career, not news radio particularly, but Fear Factor was antithetical to who you are now. And that I thought it was hard for me to accept that you were able to stand in a position of judgment of what comedy is or isn't, having done Fear Factor and the impact it had on the comedy business and television.
That's an interesting angle, and I gotta think that angle's got to be coming from some weird animosity that you might have had to me already before this because, first of all, I mean, how many sitcom writers are really comics? It's very few.
Well, they
and
all.
How many people
A lot of them started as comics. I'm just saying in comedy in general.
You can't say that that's taking away jobs because it's an economic issue. And if I wasn't hosting it, someone else would have hosted it. And the real issue was there's a lot of shitty fucking sitcoms. There was Sex in the City, and there was fucking The Single Guy, and all these terrible. This is when I was on NBC. These terrible sitcoms, and they weren't getting good ratings. And all of a sudden you'd put something like Survivor on, which was far cheaper to do, and economically it was way better for the networks, and they made a lot of money because they got great ratings.
Right, so
I did the show. I did the pilot or whatever the fuck we did. I think actually I had signed up for like 8 or 9 episodes, clearly thinking this was going to be a 8 or 9 episodes, just get some money and move on to something else. I had a development deal before that. I was trying to write a sitcom on my own, and I just got hooked up.
What was that about?
I think it was just about, I was really into playing pool at the time, and I was trying to make some sort of a sitcom, like a Cheers sort of a thing about a pool hall with a bunch of people that were regulars that hung out in this place all the time. That didn't work out, and so then the Fear Factor thing came up, and it was a real random sort of a thing. I get a call from my agent. NBC wants you to do this game show. They're really interested. Would you go and meet with them? I went and met with them, and I thought it was really funny, and the people were really fun, like that. Matt Kunitz and the producers, they were nice guys.
Yeah.
And we were all laughing about stuff, and I said it'd be cool to work with these guys. Yeah, well, fuck it, let's do this crazy game show.
Right.
Didn't know what it was going to be, and then as it got. It was great financially, and sometimes it was fun to do. And the people that I did it with were a lot of fun. But there was a lot of times where I didn't enjoy it at all, and a lot of times where it really, really felt like work, which is, like you can't complain because, there's people that have real jobs.
But on a business level, I mean, Jeff Zucker, the head of NBC, loved you. Mm-hmm. And you were doing something for his vision of the network that was working.
Fear Factor was, yeah. I mean, it was... altogether, I had something to do with it, but if it wasn't me, it would have been someone else. It would have been
I understand that. I just
successful.
I'm just trying to figure out, in terms of where your heart is now.
Integrity, you mean?
Well, I mean, it's not even just integrity. I'm not going to be that broad about it. I mean, I stated my intellectual argument, but obviously from where you're sitting, a job's a job. It was presented to you in a certain way. You had no idea it was going to become a cultural phenomenon that would eventually, really be about, getting, people to eat balls. It was as close to that that TV show in RoboCop. I'd buy that for $1.
Yeah.
I mean, it was as close to as moronic as you can get in television.
And while I was doing it, I was making fun of it. I mean, constantly.
I know, but still, like, and that must have at least released some of the steam, because I have to assume, being the type of person you are and being on the path you were at, I know you were making millions of dollars, but there had to be something that was sticking in your craw. I mean, it had to hurt somewhere.
It didn't feel good. Yeah, no, I didn't enjoy it.
Because my question is that if Bill Hicks were alive, who was a hero of yours, how would he have said? What do you think he would have said about Fear Factor as a reality?
Oh, I'm sure he would have made fun of it, as I would if I wasn't on it. If I wasn't on it, I would have made fun of it, for sure. But, there's something that you can't really financial freedom, like real, true financial freedom, is a really underappreciated thing.
Absolutely.
The ability to never worry.
There's a price for it.
Yeah, but the price was a few years of work. And while I was doing that work, I was only working 3 days a week, and I was still able to do stand-up and do a bunch of other things. And I did stand-up while I was on Fear Factor. And it was kind of screwy, though, because a lot of the people would come expecting to see the guy from Fear Factor, expecting to see, squeaky clean.
That was the burden of your Faustian bargain.
Yeah, and I'm doing jokes about drugs in the Middle East and all this crazy shit and evolution, and, it was a weird transition, but in the end, it all sorted itself out.
Because that exactly what you're saying is that, right? Yeah, I mean, obviously the financial freedom in a real sense, to where you or your family does not have to worry for the rest of your lives, and maybe even into your kids' life, however responsible those kids turn out to be, is certainly something that people strive for, and it is freedom in a capitalist system, and there's no doubt about that. I understand that. But that is also the very essence of the Faustian deal of selling out. That, you get that. But, in the aftermath of that, you're going to have to wrestle with what you seem to have wrestled with, which is that, I know I did that, but I'm not that guy, and that guy, you know, that did that was just doing that for money. Now I'm this guy.
I think I'm the same guy. I think as long as you're saying while you're doing it that you're doing it for money and just keep pushing forward, there's certainly a price you pay as far as perception goes.
Do you feel like you contributed to the dumbing down of the culture?
No.
Really?
No
Why
doubt
not?
about it. It would have dumbed down without me. There's no stopping
But isn't that a cop-out in a way?
No, the show was hot dogs. Are hot dogs bad for you? Yeah, well, sort of. You shouldn't eat them every day, all day. But sometimes I want a steak, and sometimes I want a fucking hot dog. And sometimes I come home from a hard day at work, I want to watch some fuckheads eat animal dicks on TV. You know, why is that bad? It is what it is.
You tell me, why is that bad?
I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I think it's
okay?
a choice. I think it's a choice and a broad spectrum of choices, and you can choose to, you know, watch the Discovery Channel on some new fucking show on Hypernovas, or you can choose to watch Fear Factor. It's up to you.
Right.
You know, but what it is mindless entertainment.
Yeah, but but in general,
no different from that than a sitcom. But that's mindless entertainment too. It's just fun.
Sometimes, but I mean, in sense that, you know, as somebody who is a critic of culture and somebody who is enlightened, what do you think of those people that choose to watch Fear Factor over and over again?
Well, you know, I watched it too, and I also watched Survivor. Yeah, but I watched Survivor. I wasn't in that. I've watched a lot of dumb shows that I'm not in. I think you could definitely say that shows like that and anything that's broadcast in front of millions and millions of people is going to contribute to the way they think about things. And if you show dumb shit on TV and you lower the standards, you're definitely going to get dumb people.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean they have to be that. They could also tune into different channels. They could also read books. There's a wide variety of choices that you could do with your life. You know, You don't necessarily watch Fear Factor and become dumb. I know a lot of smart people that used to watch Fear Factor and thought it was ridiculous, and they enjoyed it.
Well, they were watching it for the wrong reason.
They're the right reason for them. Look, I'm not discounting in any way, shape, or form the idea that doing a show like that is quote-unquote selling out in an artistic way. But I never stopped doing what I was doing on the side. I never stopped doing comedy. I never stopped writing. I never stopped performing. So the way I looked at it was just an opportunity to make a shitload of money, and it made it an uncomfortable situation where there was this weird sort of there's two different perceptions of me, you know, what I was doing on stage and what I was doing on the television show. So there's a price. Yeah, I mean, would I do it again? I think I would, you know, for two reasons. One, also because I think with a lot of comics take themselves very seriously. You know, they take their ideas and their what they're projecting very seriously.
You take yourself pretty seriously.
Yeah, nothing takes you out of that more than being the fucking host of Fear Factor. You know, no matter what you say, no matter how, you know, you're never going to start a cult.
But what I understand that, but you know, and that might be detrimental to your cult. And I know a lot of people would say, you know, there was a time where the idea of selling out, you know, had more resonance. That now it seems that people are like, hey man, you know, do what you got to do. If you can keep your personality, you know, it's cool. You know, do whatever commercial you want as long as you rise above the commercial. But I guess my big question, and you seem to address it a bit, is that being somebody who is as like, you know, passionately involved with the evolution of the human community. You know, and the idea that, you know, we are all operating on a series of wavelengths and share a lot of common possibilities for growth and really taking this thing to the next level. And that is where your comedy comes from. It's calling out morons and being proactive about what our biology enables us to do that you couldn't have carried. That it must have been a fairly weighty cross to bear.
It definitely was at many points in time. Yeah, especially you know, the days where I thought it was really stupid. Like there was days where the stunts were really just dumb, and the people, especially the people. If the group was cool, like it was a crapshoot every week. Like, you know, you get 8 new people or whatever it was, depending on the show. 6 new people sometimes. Sometimes they were really cool, and sometimes they were just insufferably douchey. They're just impossibly douchey.
But did it go on too long? Was there points where all you could think about was the payday and that, like, it was all going to be worth it?
Well, what happened was I started smoking pot like right before I started doing it. So
had you gotten the deal?
First season, yeah. The first season I did sober. The first season is Fear Factor. The 2nd through 6th season, every single episode I was high as fuck. Every single episode I would have a pot lollipop and sit in my trailer and wait for us to do it and then go do it. And it would be much easier to do. I'd be fascinated. Then I would look at it like, you know, like how weird is this fucking show? How crazy is this? Is this real? You know,
right.
that it became sort of a fun thing to do.
And what's the difference between that and getting high to get through your job?
There's no difference.
Okay.
That is what it is.
Right.
I mean, well, it was that too, but it was also when I'm high, if I was working on Fear Factor, that's when I would come up with a lot of great ideas for bits.
Right.
You know?
But was there a part of it that was sort of like, I've got a conscience about this?
In what way?
In that, like, I don't want to fucking be doing this. This is fucking breaking my heart. I need to get high to fucking keep my heart open so I don't destroy myself inside.
No, I never took it that seriously. I think it was more like, fuck, this is dumb. I don't want to do this because I don't want to be here right now. I'd rather be, hanging out with my friends or doing whatever, playing this or doing
writing
that.
bits about people who watch Fear Factor.
Or do Fear Factor, yeah. Yeah, writing bits about me if I wasn't me, for sure. I think it was, I just didn't enjoy it sometimes. Sometimes I did, though. Sometimes it was fun,
So 4 or 5 years of that, you had to self-medicate to get through your job.
Well, I started self-medicating after the first year. I did once. What happened was I showed up. I got high during the afternoon with a buddy of mine. We had like a late night shoot, and I showed up and I was still high, and I had a fucking great time. And I was like, wow, why don't I do this all the time? Like, I would really enjoy this show if I was high all the time. So I think like maybe 90% of the time I did it, I was stoned.
Mm. So now let's talk about the other thing that you seem to be sort of obsessively now. What is your daily routine now, exercise wise?
It all depends. Most of the time I'm doing jiu-jitsu probably 3 or 4 nights a week, and then I lift weights maybe 1 day a week. But it's more to kind of keep from getting injured and stuff
What's
like
your
that.
supplement regimen?
A lot of fish oil. I take ridiculous amounts of that stuff. I take almost every sort of multivitamin or type of vitamin. I take.
I'll show you what I'm taking.
B-complex. Okay. Cool.
My dad's into it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Cool.
And I've been on some stuff for the head, and you probably know about it. You probably know more about it than I do. What about creatine, steroids, human growth hormone?
I don't take creatine. I take human growth hormone. I take testosterone in a cream form. I go to what's called a hormone replacement therapist, a doctor.
Do you need more
specializes.
testosterone, Joe?
It's not a matter of need. It's a matter of maintaining your body to state where it is as a young person, where you can recover quicker from things.
It's not about juice.
It's not about juice. It's very, very low doses if you do it correctly.
Yeah. Now, what does human growth hormone do?
What it does is replaces all the stuff that starts to go away as you get older.
Right.
What you're doing as you're getting older is your hair turns gray and your body aches more as your body's not producing as much hormones.
Are you afraid of dying?
No, I just like my body to work well.
Okay.
I think, people say, well, hey, man, you're worried about what that's going to do to you? Yeah, you can think about it that way. I definitely do. That is a concern. But you know what else is a concern? Your body breaking down and you dying, which is absolutely, definitely going to happen.
Now, when I saw you recently, I hadn't seen you in a while, and I saw you at the UCB, and I definitely felt that there's something, like, different about. Now, does human growth hormone do something to your head? Did your head get bigger?
No.
All right.
No. Your head gets bigger as you get older, depending on what nationality
My
you
head's
are.
very big.
Look at fucking Val Kilmer. You see on all the growth in the world, his head's enormous.
I know, but he's also, I think, a distended alcoholic guy, so his body's sort of shriveled, and he's probably got that weird belly in his head.
I was talking to a buddy of mine about that who got really fat, and he lost weight, but he doesn't want to lose too much weight because he said his head grew when he got fat.
Yeah.
And he's was just crazy. He's like, I don't want to be one of those skinny guys with a big, giant, fat person's head. Yeah. But if you lift weights, if you lift a lot of weights, especially, I got into like really heavy weightlifting a few years back, like back in.
You were roided up for a while, weren't you?
No.
Never?
No.
Never.
The only stuff that I'd ever taken, the stuff that was like anabolic, was actually legal stuff.
Oh yeah.
The stuff you used to be able to buy at GNC. The strongest stuff I ever took was
I
that.
guess like you, I remember you were kind of like, and when you do the weight thing, if you don't do it right, it can really fuck you.
You can definitely get too big in certain ways. You can unbalance your body. I did creatine for a while. Creatine makes you gain a lot of water weight too, and it makes you puffy a little bit,
Yeah, and so you generally do kind of flexibility stuff too?
I do a lot of that. I still do a lot of kickboxing workout.
Yeah.
I have a bag set up in my garage and it's padded out there, and so I work out doing that too. And sometimes I work out with kickboxing trainers.
Now I get the sense that when you do it's Ultimate Fighting, right? I already asked you.
Yeah.
That for some reason when I hear I don't watch it, but every once in a while I'll pass it and I'll watch you and I'll see you doing the play-by-play, and it seems to me that you fucking love that. that you like? It seems to me like there's some part of me when I see you doing that, like I'm like, that's got to make Joe happy.
It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. You know, it's definitely not like doing Fear Factor. You know, what I'm doing now, between doing the UFC and doing stand-up comedy, like everything I do is fun. I enjoy all of it, you know, so nothing feels like work, which to me is a much better existence than when I was doing Fear Factor.
And do you feel like you have exercised that part of your conscience that was compromised doing Fear Factor? I mean, do you feel like the journey from that guy and the judgments around that guy, like the judgments that I had, which may be only me, and you know, and certainly, you know, I'm talking to you and I'm being honest with you. Do you feel like you were able to move beyond that with your audiences?
I think I moved beyond it when I stopped doing it, and then slowly the audience from Fear Factor kind of disappeared, and the audience from stand-up, my stand-up audience, increased a lot more.
How long did that take?
I think when my first good CD was released, I think that had a big impact. My first CD that I really feel like represented me, which was like 2006, that was Shiny Happy Jihad. And that was the first one that I ever did where I went, wow, I just put out a CD that really was like me being on stage, you know, whereas all the other ones was like, I was like awkward, or my comedy wasn't ready, or whatever it was. You know, so that helped a lot. So then I started developing fans from my stand-up, and then I did the Showtime special in 2006 as well, and then my last one, which was 2009. That started, you know, and then I got fans from comedy.
That's great. You know, it took you a while to come on this show because you were, you know, mad at me on some level for talking to Carlos. You know, without
not at all.
Okay, not mad. But
I was mad at you for what you said about me. That you said it was two bullies arguing over bullshit, and that you said that you thought that the whole situation should have been handled by the community,
right?
And that it shouldn't have been aired publicly, which I thought was ridiculous because you had him on your show for 2 fucking hours and you exposed him.
Because the first hour I couldn't use.
You exposed him way more than I ever did in the 10 minutes of that show.
No, my show did not get around as much as that video.
You really think so?
Oh, not a chance.
I mean, as far as volume of humans that saw it, maybe, but as far as like in-depth exposure of the human being.
But let me tell you something. That's the one thing that happened because of that, and the one thing I'll admit in retrospect is that, you know, I'm not sure you're not, you know, in that situation. Both, you know, were kind of button heads, and I didn't have an idea of your personal history with him, and also I hadn't been in that world. I don't live in the world of the Comedy Store, and I hadn't been. So my knowledge and the reason why I did that second episode was because I could not post the episode that I did initially because I didn't know what was really going on. And in retrospect, what I said about you, I felt was true, and in what I watched, and then you and I exchanged some emails, and I understand that, you know, the problem was a lot bigger than than what I knew, and that the community had tried to deal with him. But I think what happened on that second episode is, despite whatever you think of that guy, there was no way you couldn't see him as a person.
Well, I saw him as a person from the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, I was friends with him. I was friends with him when I first moved to California. You know, what I knew of him was that he had some sort of a pathology. That's what I saw.
And now, because of that second episode of my show, everyone saw that.
Yeah.
There's no question about that. And there's no reason to talk about, you know, anything that you know about the guy that
right.
You know, but the one thing I didn't realize, not unlike Fear Factor, you know, in retrospect, is that video, because of the way it got around, was really on some level, you know, you and Carla's wedding video. that you, I mean, how many years, like, not unlike Fear Factor, has it taken you to distance yourself from that situation?
Yeah, no, it still comes up. You know, people will still yell it out places. You know, it's still I'm connected to him forever because of that video.
And how do you feel about that?
Well, if I had a chance to do it all over again, I probably wouldn't have, for a bunch of reasons. Because even if you're right, when you put out a lot of negative energy like that, you're going to get a lot of negative energy from people unsolicited in return. Because it's just unavoidable. It's just this weird, you know, backlash sort of a thing. The wave comes in and it goes out. And when you're arguing with someone and yelling with someone, it's very difficult to distinguish between you and them. You know, you're connected to this shitty person, and you're yelling at the shitty person. That shitty person's yelling at you, and it's just a big emotional mess. And you know, you open yourself up for all these people to make these decisions on who you are based on that. For me, it was. The whole thing was completely unplanned out, and I think I explained this to you when I saw you recently when we did the green room thing with Paul Provenza. What happened was he he went on stage after me. And he wasn't supposed to be there. Kurt Fox was up. And he went up and took the microphone from Kurt Fox and said, something about me. And if I didn't have the balls to say any of that shit to his face. And I was still in the room. So I went back on stage. I go, what are you talking about? Like, what are you saying? And then all of a sudden we're in this argument. And it just so happened my friend Brian was in the back of the room filming it. It was just random. He didn't find out about it until it had already started. Someone yelled to him, hey, Joe and Carlos are on stage together. So he went and filmed it. And none of it was planned out. And if I had a chance to do it all again, I certainly wouldn't have approached it the same way. I certainly wouldn't have been angry with him.
Do you think that in retrospect it served the point that you were trying to make? That, whether the video, if it was a difference between the video being out there or not, do you think that he learned his lesson?
He certainly did. He had to. There's no way. He's a totally different person now. The way he deals with people, the way he deals with clubs, the way he doesn't run the light anymore. And he's been exposed for what he was doing. What he was doing was horrible, man. It wasn't like an issue of, you have a bid on Kmart and I have a bid on Kmart and you think that maybe I saw your bid and copied it and changed some shit around. It was a situation where a guy was going on before people and doing their best bits on purpose.
I think it was his way of literally annihilating other people.
Yes, and it was also his way of overcoming some horrible shit that happened to him.
Yeah, we're not adjusted to talk about that.
And what it was is a sick person. It was a sick person who people were making money off of. These clubs and the networks that were hiring him, they knew his history, especially the clubs. They all knew exactly what was going on, and they didn't have a problem with it because they were making money.
Right, and no one was willing to stop it.
And we put that video out going, good, fuck this guy. That was my attitude in whatever it was, 2006 or 7 or whenever it happened. It was like, fuck this guy. Now people are going to get to see this because it was gross, man. It was a real problem where he would come into the room and people would flash the light so that we knew that he was on stage. And it was way more than I'd ever seen before. I'd seen guys who were questionable before, and there'd been guys that, there's always this parallel thinking, and there's people that sound like other people.
And do versions of other people.
Yeah, but this was a different thing. This was a guy who was a sick person.
Well, that's the one thing I found in talking to him that second time that, the one thing that happens, it seems, when I talk to somebody for an hour, and I think that the way that the two things complemented each other was that it's very easy in our business. We know each other, at least a bit. You know what was going on with him, but everybody out in the world who just sees him on television or just sees that video, it's very easy to make him a villain. And just hate on this one dimension of this guy. And the one thing that I learned with him sitting there is that he's troubled beyond anything I understand.
Yeah, he's a victim as much as he is a villain, no doubt about it.
And did that come to you after? I mean, like after that video, do you have empathy for the guy?
I had empathy for him that night. I had empathy that what you saw in that video is 10 minutes of what happened over 40 minutes on stage. 40 minutes on stage.
And also how many years of friendship?
And by that point, it was 2007, more than a decade. More than a decade of knowing him. More than a decade of seeing him do Jeff Foxworthy bits right off of a CD, Richard Pryor bits.
In the evolution of your friendship with him, because it seems to me that you guys, were genuinely friends at some time.
Well, not close.
All right.
We barely knew each other.
But you were there every night with him, and you guys, because you're both fairly competitive dudes, I'm sure there was some cockfighting going on.
No, initially, no. Initially, it was I didn't have any friends in L.A. I moved here, and him and his cousin were nice guys, and they invited me to go hang out with them a couple times, and we went and played pool.
How many times did you talk to him about this problem once you acknowledged it?
Twice. Two long conversations early where I pulled him aside and I said, hey, man, you're doing this and you're doing that. Like, what's going on? It was just me and him. I pulled him aside.
Yeah.
I was just trying to, tell him, maybe you fell asleep with the TV on and you didn't realize it.
Yeah.
I didn't know, what the depth of the issue was.
Mm.
And it was just denial and weird squirrely behavior, and just the way he was talking was a crazy person talking. It was all total denial.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just distanced myself from him. I stopped hanging out with him.
So now, after this video has been out there now, how do you distance yourself from that?
I don't know. It is what it is. Yeah. There's nothing I could do.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess talking about it like this sort of kind of clarifies where I was when it happened and what it was. But I don't, like I said, I don't think I would have done it again, but it was a good thing that it happened. It was a good thing for certainly for stand-up. It was a good thing for people also realizing, young people that are coming up, you can't do that. And there's a lot of people that are still doing that, man. There's a real issue with guys that were opening up for him.
I know, yeah, and it's always happened, but not in that degree. I mean, you know, there's an evolution of an art form. You know, where there was a period in stand-up's history before stand-ups were stand-ups where everyone did the same fucking joke.
Sure.
But once people took ownership of their points of view.
I had an issue with Buddy Hackett. I was
Really?
hosting Last Comic Standing. It wasn't my fault. I was hosting Last Comic, or it was one of the judge on Last Comic Standing. Me, Monique, and Buddy Hackett. And there's a guy goes up, and this guy Ant, you know who he is?
Yeah.
And he's fucking doing jokes from movies, man. He's doing like from the movie Boiler Room, doing a punchline about they should put you people on an island. They did. It's called Manhattan. I mean, that's from Boiler Room.
Sure.
He's doing this and killing.
I think it might have originally been from Larry Ambros's act.
I think it was from
Jim David.
Jim David,
yeah.
yes.
So the movie stole it from the movie.
And he stole it from the movie. And so, anyway, I compliment the guy and say, you know, you've got great stage presence, your delivery's awesome, you're really dynamic, but I've heard those jokes before. I've heard a lot of them before, and I start, you know, naming where I've heard them. Like, you know, you can't just fucking do this on TV. And Buddy Hackett goes crazy. Buddy Hackett goes, "Fuck you, you fucking asshole! Who are you to tell him I never heard those jokes before?" And he's going crazy, screaming at me, and he's wearing gloves. He was a weird guy at this point. He wore gloves in his hands, and I think, like, you know, should I yell back at this guy? Like, what the fuck do I do here?
Yeah.
So I say nothing. I decided to just say nothing.
Yeah.
I decided to just look at him and just say, all right, what you're saying is what you're saying. I'm not even going to react to you. And he died 2 weeks later. And I was thinking, fuck, what if I yelled at him? What if I said, fuck you, you old douchebag? And, and then it escalated, and he had a heart attack on the spot.
I made that mistake with Gallagher.
That's right, you did. You fucking did too, man, because for sure that kicked things up
for
a
the
notch.
same reason, really.
Yeah.
So it was better off to take the high road.
Well, it's just, you know, I made a choice.
Well, it's good talking to you, Joe.
Good talking to you too. I'm glad we did this.
I think we had a good conversation.
Yeah.
And I think we know each other better now.
Absolutely.
All right, man. Thanks.
Okay, that's our show. See that? Me and Joe are friends. We just need to talk about a few things. Wasn't even that tense at all. He was rather sweet. I'm finding that these days people come on my show and they act a little more low-key, a little more human than they do in their own worlds. I guess that's what I'm doing here. Just a reminder, you can get that second show we did at the Bell House in Brooklyn with Bill Hader, Fred Armisen, Chuck Klosterman, Sarah Vowell, and Eric Drysdale right now on any of the apps. The apps for iPhone, iPod, iPod Touch, Droid. You can get the WTF Premium. If you go to WTF Pod, select Get the Podcast, go to the non-iTunes option, and load up on that premium, and you can listen to that right now. It will be up for everyone on April 7th. And as I said before, April 4th, the Conan O'Brien episode will occur. Looking forward to that. What else can I tell you? JustCoffee.coop, as always, awesome. Get the WTF blend. I get a little kickback on that. You can go to WTF Pod, kicking a few shekels. Keep me alive and living and moving forward and enjoying life and doing this show. Well, let's not go crazy with the enjoying life thing. But you know what I mean. PunchlineMagazine.com for all your up-to-date comedy news. I think that's about it. Is it not? I know I'm forgetting something. Oh, I remember. Madison, Wisconsin at the Comedy Club on State Street. Thursday, the 31st through the 2nd. The Comedy Club on State Street in Madison, Wisconsin. I'll be there. Come on down.